Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Dev Different podcast. I'm excited about this one. I have today with me my cohort members, colleagues, reading list recommendation folks, and friends, Sam and Ramsey of Uptrends. How's it going, guys?
Hey,
What's up? Good to be here.
Good to be here. All the way from Minnesota. I've always stereotyped you guys as like the Minnesota boys or like the Babel boys from like way back when.
Yeah, before we became Uptrends. Yeah.
Yeah, the first time I saw your business name, I was like, it sounds like translation software. And I think
It-
that's probably like one of the first things I ever said to you, which is like so not tasteful. It's like, hey, I'm confused, but
Yeah, we originally went by Babel, changed the name to Uptrends last year. I think it was a pretty good indication when like 50% of the conversations we'd have would start that way. Like, hey, I thought you guys were like Duolingo competitor. And so that was like, okay, I guess we should call it something else.
we'll get into Uptrends in a second. But first, like Sam, Ramsey, what's your story? What led you to where you're at now? What's your background?
Wow. Profound. Sam, I guess you should go first.
yeah, millions of years ago in 2018, Bitcoin was a huge deal, and Ramsey and I were working on like a project kind of in like the trading space in college. Um, Basically, like how can we use sentiment online on Reddit and Twitter to like trade Bitcoin through a kind of like quant club.
And
And
that
I
was
was a
back
computer
when
science major, huh?
Bitcoin was at what, like $3,000, something like
Yeah,
that?
back when it was really cheap, and we were all using it to get fake IDs, and then did some kind of trading on it, made some money, thought we were geniuses, and kind of pieced out until COVID times. In the meantime, like finished college, did some stuff in cybersecurity, but then now, kind of had a chance to quit all that and go full time on what we're working on now.
Excellent. And you guys, as well as me, how old are you guys?
Feels
You an
like
old soul.
Yeah, feels like millions of years. 26 on paper.
Uh huh.
Yeah, 26.
Yeah, and I'm 25. So yeah, that was another thing that I was like, when we first met, I was like, finally, I'm not like the youngest by a lot in the room. Like, so
Yeah, because how old is Devin?
Devin's 39, I think. I think he
A
just
big
turned
4-0
39.
coming up. When
Yeah.
are you getting him?
The adult
Yeah.
in the room.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, like all of my core team is like in that like between 35 and 40. So it's like I'm always the kid. Yeah, Ramsey, what's your background?
Yeah, so I mean, kind of like Sam, we met in college physics class, joined the quantitative trading club at the University of Minnesota, did a project to trade Bitcoin. I think my early claim to fame was that I bought Bitcoin at like $2,000 and sold it at like 4,000 and thought I was just like the biggest genius of all time, and then never really bought it until it got really big a couple of years ago. And so, yeah, was going to school for industrial engineering, kind of stumbled my way into stock trading. After college, graduated into COVID, got a job in management consulting, traded on the side. And then Sam and I think one day, like late 2020, we just kind of had a conversation and said like, hey, maybe we could turn some of this project that we were working on into a business, or at least attempt to, make it into something other people could use. And so that commenced the long Lord of the Rings journey over the past 4 years to where we are now in building Uptrends, formerly called Babel, formerly called just Sam and Ramsey's fun side project.
Excellent. And yeah, I guess for the viewers, just so we know the personalities here, who to trust and who not to trust. Sam and Sam, you're the technical side of the house, and Ramsey business and raising money. Is that accurate?
Wait,
Yeah, I write all the code, and then Sam proofreads it basically.
Commits it under his GitHub credentials and takes credit.
stolen valor. Are you kidding me?
No, Sam is all of the development, and I just kind of watch somewhat peacefully. I don't know if Sam would agree with that. And then, yeah, I manage most of the business growth side of
Peacefully.
things.
Yeah, it's kind of similar. I mean, Devin's a full stack developer, but he's been much more heavily involved in the business side of the house. So kind of got a similar dynamic. But okay, so yeah, just hit me whichever one of you feels appropriate, given the audience, with the elevator pitch. What's uptrends?
Oh, actually, I mean, Sam, you should give it since this is the technical audience here.
We use a Dagster pipeline that automates process. No, give us the business. Come on.
Yeah, so I guess the long and short of it is Uptrends helps financial advisors and everyday investors find which stocks are trending in online chatter. So you can go on Uptrends, see a list of which stocks are being talked about in the news, and then set alerts to be notified about the next major event affecting the stocks that you care most about. So whether it's Apple, Tesla, I think this week Sam and I were both talking about a much less known stock called ASTS. You can go in, set alerts for things like price changes, news surges, lawsuits. Elon Musk says something crazy about a stock in your portfolio, and then we'll use some AI to summarize those events and then send you a nicely packaged email when it matters most. And I think kind of the rationale early on was just, let's see if we could beat the market. I think that business proposition has evolved quite a bit over time. We've realized more recently that, if you're a financial advisor, the biggest thing might not be trying to beat the market day in and day out. It's more likely that the biggest thing for you is being able to have confident, consistent conversations with your clients. And so, when a client emails you and says, "Hey, John Deere stock is up 5% today. What happened?" Like, if you're a financial advisor, you need to come back with a solid answer. And so they go to Uptrends to get a summary and get notified before it matters and before their clients can kind of, stop trusting them, I guess.
Sure.
So yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Awesome. And now I want to hear Sam's version of it, the Dagster pipeline.
Oh no, that's just a joke. Dagster's a recent foray, but yeah, on the back end side of the world, we run a few 100,000 articles a week through kind of a text processing pipeline, and a little bit of the custom code from before, plus new stuff that we've written since, just to basically build like the densest representation of the conversation around every stock in the market, and use that information to kind of pull out, what stocks are people talking about, like risks, rewards, potential opportunities, and what's kind of happening with each of them. And so we kind of early on started as just kind of doing sentiment data, and it's different than regular sentiment. Like we break stuff out into like how speculative or reactive, beyond just is it good or bad? Like, are people talking about what's happening now, last week, or what's going to happen, for this stock? And sentiment just isn't super trustworthy when, like us, you can't make recommendations for legal reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of live in a weird world in the middle where we're trying to just be the best information broker about the news at large, a few million articles at a time.
You sort of answered my question in there when you started to talk about information density. But, I remember one of the phrases that, you guys said or have used in your marketing material is like trade the news, right? And like at one time that was a straightforward like categorization of some, pieces of information is like, this is news. But I think, it's a fair question to ask, like, what do you consider news to be? Especially considering that, like, most people of our generation, like, obtain all of their information on non-traditional, sources, TikTok, basically social media, right? And then there's obviously some AI generation stuff that's going to start getting interesting, but what do you guys consider to be, as you're going about and parsing this space of the news, and then trying to condense it or present the most, information dense, but still cover the gamut of stuff that's going on? How do you go about attacking that?
Yeah, one time we had a really interesting conversation with someone who is a manager of writers at a big news kind of publisher on the stock market. And it was pretty nice, the honesty in the conversation. He was telling us about, what they're really after every day is what drives traffic to the website because they're just trying to sell ads. And so he said, I'll take half my team and they'll just be writing about Apple or just about Tesla that day, depending on, which one's moving more and whether or not it's really substantive. We're going to post, 4 or 5 articles that day just because that's what's driving clicks. And so that kind of, gave us a nice rude awakening into kind of what we're up against. And so I kind of think about the news in a few different buckets. One is like new material information that's like been decided. So you can think about like when earnings comes out, when a deal is announced, mergers and acquisitions, anything that comes out with like kind of a price and numbers or a percentage, those are instantly going into, one, high frequency trading models around the globe and become priced in instantly. And then two, all the big firms, they have valuation models for how much they think companies are worth based on that. And they're pretty much instantly going to converge to priced in. And so when I think about the news that we look for, it's more about what events are coming up for this company that have moved the price before and like are hard to price in ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So we can use information about like companies talking about product launches or things that are coming up where we can, one, find out when it's happening, and then two, kind of use supplementary sources to find out how people are reacting to like this product that's about to come out. So it's still publicly available information, but it's not instantly already known how much money it's going to make them. And so those kinds of things are where we can make a difference in the kind of 1 week to 1 month time frame ahead of those events and kind of get people plugged in to what's coming up.
Gotcha. And that was actually one of my other questions. And I know that we've talked about it before, but I know how startups are. And you guys are optimizing for kind of like 1 week to 1 month realized trade gains. Right?
On any of the like alert stuff. Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
that really seems like where the time range that news is most impactful. Like if you're trying to trade stocks on a minute by minute or hourly basis, like what people say online or in the news or, in the headlines isn't going to move the price. And if you're like Warren Buffett where you're not making a trade, you're investing over the course of years and decades, like the news week to week doesn't really move the price for you or impact your decision super heavily either. And so, yeah, it's really the 5 day to 5 week time horizons where you see the most impact from what people are saying online.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting too, so let me rephrase, I think, or summarize, Sam, what you're saying is that like those more traditional and like straightforward sources of information about business, operations or earnings calls or anything like that. You're saying that basically that's relatively a solved problem and that the market pretty much immediately prices for. Do you guys broker in that information as well? It's just not your like main driver.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Just because it still moves the price, just not at like any sort of time frame where a non-robot can react to it.
Sure.
But when people wonder, why is this stock up or down 5% today? It's because they blew out earnings the day before. It's still good to be able to explain what's happening and why. But it's immaterial to actually being able to make money on it for the most part, for retail or anybody operating outside of like high frequency land.
Sure. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, it kind of, so basically you guys are honing in on a specific opportunity, which is that people talk and a lot of that talk is now online, and you guys have found a correlation between what people are saying and how they're saying it and the way that you guys are analyzing it and your ability to make money off of that information over 5 day to 5 week trading period. So.
Yeah. I mean, our kind of classic example originally was in 2021, 22, somewhere in there. Ramsey and I were just kind of experimenting with like, well, we better make sure that this stuff works and it would be good to make some money on the side. So we were trying to pick out a few trades. And we saw that Kroger had super negative sentiment from what we were seeing. And people were saying like there was a president change on the board, something along those lines. And people were kind of imagining that the new sales strategy was not performing well at the stores and that grocers were still kind of underperforming. And then there were a few kind of comps where you could look at like Walmart or Target, and they saw like same store sales down over like a year, but Kroger hadn't kind of moved in tandem. And so, using a little bit of human intelligence or intuition, whatever you want to call it, we shorted Kroger going into their earnings, kind of expecting to see the same thing. And then boom, next day they were down 12% or something. And, at that moment we were like, okay, we've got something.
Yeah.
We still don't know exactly who's willing to pay for it and, how much, but it's all a journey.
Yeah. That's a crazy, awesome feeling. I had one of those a couple weeks ago when some of the AI stuff that we're working on, like, finally started to give more than it was taking, and it like wrote a whole task by itself. And it's like, oh my gosh,
Let's go.
it works. It's
My
worth
baby.
Super cool. To dive in a little bit more to the technology, I kind of think about the world of AI software in terms of like before ChatGPT and after, right? When the world became aware that AI was like a useful tool that could actually drive some value. And I personally, I did some AI work previous to that, but I'm mostly like a post LLM guy that has been utilizing those things. But I know that you guys were in the game, before that. So talk a little bit, Sam, about your early approaches to using AI to solve this problem, and how has that evolved as kind of the AI tool explosion has happened over the last few years.
The funny thing is the pre-LLM world was like anything that was called AI was basically just machine learning we didn't know how to do yet. And so anything that got bucketed in there, it was kind of bad to like Ramsey was putting it in pitch decks and stuff. I was like, don't say we're doing AI, before this, because it's kind of like, well, what are you actually doing? If you're saying AI, sometimes there's like a Markov chain under the hood.
Yeah, it's true.
But
It was very taboo pre-2021. Like, we went out of our way to avoid using the word AI on our like landing page and marketing material because we didn't feel like we could be using it, honestly.
yeah, and now you see like throughout 2023, just like a 10% bump in any stock when they mentioned AI in their earnings calls.
I mean, you go to Walmart, you see AI toothbrushes, AI timers in the aisle, like there's household products that are marketing themselves with AI
Yeah.
now.
But our stuff has always kind of deriven a lot of its value from like computational linguistics, which is like a subfield of NLP, that kind of tries to go like we were looking a little bit more at like grammar, like what can we do beyond just like words, because we had embedding models back then, and people were using those for kind of sentiment analysis-y stuff. But like part of our insight is like the structure of the sentences that people use tell you a little bit more about how they actually feel. Like, are you nervous or scared or excited? Instead of just like positive or negative. So a lot of the cool stuff that we were doing comes out of that, where it was, I don't even know, it wasn't really ever AI until recently, but more just kind of like we did a lot of clustering stuff, when looking at like how do you detect topics, and clustering is still kind of interesting problem, and like kind of forecasting on graphs and all that jazz. But for the most part, like everything that we did was just like a really good kind of metadata generation model that would tell us like what's going on kind of sentence per sentence in an article, and then mostly just statistical stuff for analysis with that.
Gotcha. And then as time has evolved, or as time has passed, I guess time doesn't evolve. That'd be weird. How have you integrated any of the new large language model stuff, or are you still using kind of the same computational approach? And I really like, sorry, not to interrupt myself, but there's a lot of power. I forget the name of the author, but I was just reading, there's kind of a foundational textbook on the field of information theory, which is like very much linked to what we're talking about here. It doesn't necessarily need to be language, but you know, a lot of times that's like the best way to approach it, or to get people to conceptualize it, because we all understand language. But I think the book was written in like 1960 or something like that. So it's not like, and that's the thing too about all this AI stuff is like, we think that we just figured it out and like we're awesome because of it. And like every software engineer now is kind of like benefiting from a little bit of like overinflated, like I'm like, oh, I'm an AI engineer. And it's like, well, yes, in some sense, but in another sense, like somebody else built a model and I'm using it. Right.
Right.
Anyways, how has the kind of the technology stack evolved or not? Are you sticking with that computational clustering and logic approach or how have you approached that?
Yeah. For driving any metrics, we're still living pretty solely in computational linguistics land. Um, I mean, just like for a few reasons, one of the bigger ones is cost.
Mm-hmm.
Like to run every article through just to get some metrics from a model would be a little bananas. But what we do get, because like we have such dense information about every sentence in every article, is we can pull really really good examples when we want to run a summary for something. So if you want to ask like why might Walmart's sales be down this quarter, we can pull a lot of references from a lot of sentences. And so where the AI kind of LLM world has really helped us out is a lot in that kind of summarization explanation, where we don't have to just pass back 40 sentences and expect somebody to kind of just read them all and understand. We can get a kind of summarization explanation back and cite sources in line, so that people, one, we don't have to worry about hallucinations, because like the examples are right there. So even if there was something crazy, it would be pretty easily debunked by your own sniff test of just reading stuff. um, and it's way easier to be a personable data company now, because our platform, we can analyze everything in the world, but if it's not easy to use and it's not fun, nobody's going to use it, because what's the point? If you
Mm-hmm.
have to fight to find any information. And so we can now kind of broker that over natural language, sounding like you're talking to, like, I try to imagine like we're providing a quant to your team, basically, as a personal investor, that can pull all this information for you. So it's way easier to be human with people, even though I can't sit there and run all the data for them, but we can get like the model to do it, and
Yeah.
it's close to the same thing.
And I think that summarization piece is ultimately what everyone really wants. Like, you take traditional news, it's been dead for probably 5 to 10 years, and no one has really realized it. Like, people, you want to know what's going on. You go to Google News, you go to Yahoo Finance, you might read the headlines, but you're not. Vast majority of people aren't reading past the first paragraph in a given news article. People are going to TikTok, people are going to podcasts and listening to long form, but the vast majority of people aren't spending all day reading the entirety of articles. And so I think we kind of realized that early on. And, now you go on uptrends, you can look at the stock price and see little highlights of different events that have affected the price, and a 4-5 line summary of everything that happened with sources is ultimately what it's kind of led us to. And it seems like that's the type of format that works best for us right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I love about the world post LLM is there's all sorts of ways that like that AI could have kind of exploded onto the scene, right? Like, but the fact that it is language is kind of unique and also like really awesome, because and so Devin and I were talking about this the other day, and you guys are a really interesting study in this kind of balance. But like the idea of I'm a software guy, and that's what I do, is I build software and hardware to some degree, less professionally, but we think it's easy to get stuck in a rut of like, okay, I'm going to build a software, and like the way that people are going to use it is they're going to like look at the app and they're going to like read my charts and they're going to like do the things that I imagine that they're going to do, because like I built it and it's awesome, and like that's what you do when you build software, right? But like that idea of the best technology is that which is not seen, right? Like ultimately when it comes down to it, you can build the coolest piece of software in the world, but on the other end of it is a human, right? And that human has certain ways that they are optimized to interact with the world around them, one of which being natural language. And so like the ability for the output of a software to be, natural language that tells somebody exactly what they want, exactly when they want it, and no more, is like almost like a profound shift in thinking about how to build software. Like, for example, CodeBuddy, we do a ton of work. Like when somebody comes and they want, to be shown how to implement a Kubernetes cluster in Azure or something like that, what they're not looking for is all of the information in the world, all the documentation in the world, every possible option. Honestly, if they could have found somebody in their own office that just would have said, hey man, here's how you do it, let me show you how, like that's what they're looking for, right? And I think that, with large language models as that final like packaging piece of here's how we're actually going to deliver the answer to the user, it just, it really offers a lot of benefits of, yes, we still need all of the computational linguistics in the background. We still need all the analysis and like, for us, we're spending a lot of time making sure that we're getting the right people to build the right code and that we're not introducing security and things like that. But when it comes down to it, all we want is like, hey man, here's how you do it. Very simple. And like, honestly, I would like to get to a place where like software, the default becomes screenless, right? Where your software is working for you and doing the things that you want to do, but you don't have to go out and like navigate to a web page and do things the way that they think that you should do them, because it happens automatically. So obviously, like when it comes to uptrends, there's kind of a bifurcation of your offering, right? And I remember talking about this with you guys a couple of years ago when you started down the email train. But I start with Ramsey, I guess, and then Sam. Like, how has the move to a proactive email as opposed to a web platform impacted your customers, impacted the usability of the product? How's that process gone?
Yeah, it's definitely been an evolution. I think like with any startup, you put something out there, you throw something at the wall and you see what sticks, and then the product inevitably changes over time. And so for us, like the first initial version of our website was like a static landing page that showed like the top 10 most positive and most negative stocks in online news over the past week. And it was like interesting, but I think like we realized what every startup realizes early on is that like interesting doesn't pay the bills. Like you need to build something that is going to be impactful and going to be frictionless. And so for us, that was, after talking to a bunch of users and learning that people weren't using that first version of it, it was realizing that people didn't care as much about which stocks are positive and negative. They wanted to know why they were positive and negative, and they wanted to be informed about that without having to go to our website every day and look it up themselves. And so I think that just kind of naturally evolved into more of a framework where you can go on, you can choose the types of stocks that you want to be informed about, or, at the same time, the stocks that you don't give a crap about, and you can pick the types of events you want to get informed about. So some people really care about really niche types of, small cap stocks, and they really only care about like events like FDA approvals or insider trading. Other people want to know about every earnings call. And so I think the customization of what and where you're looking was really important. And I think once we figured that out, the answer was sending it to your email so that you in theory, you can log on to Uptrends, create an account once and set up all your preferences, and then never have to go to our website again if you don't want to, and still get a bunch of value out of the product because you're getting, notifications about the important things that you've told us you care about to your email when it matters most. And I think, that selfishly, as people that were building product, it was also a natural decision in that, like, if we can get in people's inboxes, like that's more touch points, that's more often that they're interacting with us. That means they're less likely to churn because they won't forget about us if we're building a good product. And so I don't know, I think that was just kind of the way that it evolved over time. And I think, hindsight's 2020. I wish we would have gotten there a little bit sooner, but I think that's just the way everyone does it with a startup. You always kind of try a few things and then figure it out sooner or later, or die. And
Yeah.
we're living.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sam, how did that go for you? Or like kind of that transformation to the, I guess it's push over pull, right? Pushing information to your users.
Yeah, like the user gets the push. Um, you know, I yeah, it's definitely like more in line with what we want to do, which is like meet people where they're at. Because kind of the like Ramsey was saying, the feedback that we got previous was like, okay, this is a little bit like a library. I wasn't, looking to go check out books. I was hoping you would just kind of tell me what's going on, with the stocks that I'm looking at. And so the email thing, yeah, definitely great. Just there's kind of, a huge amount of people who sell things that look like alerts who are kind of grifty. So there's still some room to do some differentiation because, you have people who, especially like look at Instagram, like Forex traders who sell signals. That's basically a subscription cost and it's hit or miss. And so there's still, and that's something we thought about early on was like, okay, we can combat this by one, always citing sources, like whenever we give people a summary, make sure that there's something in there. And even before we had summaries, we just would plug in the sentences, so like you can see for yourself, like, does this pass the sniff test for me? Do I care about this event? Whatever. So that was a big kind of kickoff, but there's still a lot of room, I think, to do in like personalization. Because right now when you get an alert from us, everybody who subscribed to that gets the same alert. And so I think there's a lot of room for us to kind of grow more into, we can be a person rather than, like this isn't a newsletter anymore that you're getting, like you're getting an email from someone on your team who knows, how much you know about this company already, whether or not you've looked at it before, if you own any, kind of competitors or comparables. Like, do you know about this industry? And kind of all of that information being plugged in as like, we can now basically, instead of sending like an email with like the event and headline and all that, I think the ideal end state is like, you basically get a text or like a Discord message or whatever from like your quant on our team.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like more personalized and in line with what you're looking for. So that's, I think, where we'd like to kind of take it. It's like, how do we make it, more natural to interact with? But from zero to here, it's definitely, I think, a much more useful platform because, we can meet people where they're at and, do a lot of work with like letting people pick how often they want to be notified about stuff, what kind of stuff. And I think people like it. But yeah, I think there's a lot of room. There's always room to be better. But I'm pretty
Yeah,
excited.
you guys just hit what? I mean, 10,000 seemed like it was a long time ago, right?
Yeah, we're at 25,000 people on the platform now, consistently growing. And I think, yeah, I like how you said that, Sam. Like, just being more of a natural, it's almost like a relationship with someone on your team, I think is where we want to get to. I think it's where a lot of AI products want to be. Where it's like, hey, I remember you looked up this stock a few weeks ago, and now something happened with that stock. You might find that interesting, and so just ultimately being there when you need them.
Mm-hmm.
And then who knows? Maybe we build like a VR AR application once that's cool, and you can live inside of Uptrends in your house
Yeah,
someday.
like I've always kind of wanted to do that. Like we have a bunch of embedding models for topics and stuff. And so there is like a physical space you could imagine like walking around inside of like the topic kind of landscape. And
Mm-hmm.
I've just kind of been thinking like what if we, stupid harebrained idea, but would be kind of fun to, spend a week doing, like make basically a Google Maps layover where you can walk around inside of the news for that week.
I
Mm-hmm.
I find myself like more often than not referring to like what's going on in the news as like the news landscape. Like I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of intuitive stuff there where like certain topics, certain entities, certain events are like closer in proximity to each other than others. There's some topography
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, it's crazy actually. There must be some underlying
Oh yeah.
patterns, because I have a similar sort of crazy harebrained idea. So like yeah, basically the VR AR, the idea of interacting with a physical space as opposed to a two-dimensional screen is our brains have spent a lot more million years learning how to do it three-dimensional than two, and like there's a lot of structures optimized for making relationships and memories and things like that. I've thought the same thing about a code base, right? Like, why is it that we still interact with a code base in a hierarchical nested folder tree structure that has one structure in the way that like the files are laid out, and then if you go to the documentation of any system, there's like a conceptual layer above that where it's like, here's how these files and folders actually make up this service, and here's how these make up this service. And it's like this kind of like human generated model of like what a code base is. And there's relationships, there's hierarchies. And so I think about like, how could you model a code repository as like a town, right? And you might have a factory that is your news analysis factory, right? And if you want to understand at a high level like what goes on there, you might walk into the reception area and you can see the inputs and outputs of the service if you don't care about what's going on. But if you walk in the back, you're going to start to see how are these requests that are coming from the outside getting packaged up, calculated, analyzed, fulfilled, and how are they getting shipped out the door, right? So I think there's a lot of possibilities just in the world for evolving what is an interface to software, because for too long, it's been, in my opinion, it's been two-dimensional HTML, JSS, JavaScript, and like that is the medium between you and your users, is like you have to deliver your thing that way. And I think like obviously like companies like Humane AI Pin are trying to do it like a different approach, which I really like. I mean, the execution has been pretty rough from their perspective, but like conceptually the idea of having a device that does what you want it to do when you want it to do it. And then the thing with screens is just there's so much opportunity for addiction and kind of taking advantage of human just faults in our brain, that like it's not our fault that social media is like untenably addicting, right? It's just that there have been psychologists and people for a lot longer than us thinking about how can we make this as addicting as possible.
I wish that we got Google Glass, or like some sort of heads-up display style thing instead of pins, and like friends on phones or whatever that one is, friend.com.
I don't know that one.
That was kind of a recent controversy. I think it was friend.com. They spent a few million on the domain, and they had, a few dollars left over now. But yeah, just definitely dicey to see people going kind of in the AI as a crutch in the battle against loneliness, instead of like AI as a tool to make boring stuff more fun and easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But no, like, I think maybe we should get some sort of... Have you heard of TL Draw? There's a lot of really cool things going on with like the kind of infinite landscape web development kind of stuff, where like you think about, like you're talking about hierarchies and navigating code bases. One of the cool things that like demo, or like one of the demos that they had, was as you zoom in and out, it, the complexity kind of expands, versus as you zoom out, it goes back to kind of regionality, so like you can think of almost like a microservices style doc, where you can zoom in and out on like what's actually going on, in this region or area. And I think that that's kind of one of the things that web design today is like missing for me, is it's all pretty cookie cutter. Nobody's like, how do you make a website like a house? Like, how do you make walking around somewhere feel more like an environment than reading?
Yeah. It's what's his name? Steve. He's the guy that Rocket Surgery made easy.
Stephen Krug. Make me think.
Don't make me think. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, it's like it should be. What's his guideline? how to use your product should be obvious or at the very least it should be self-evident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Steve Jobs had another great quote when it comes to design, like simplicity is the highest form of sophistication. And I think that the more obvious it is, the better it is for everyone. I'm still waiting for the point where you can you can go in Figma, design your wireframes or whatever, and then it just automatically turns it into like a web app code base, landing page or whatever. The amount of time I've spent trying to get emails to look good based on designs we've done in Figma, and Sam can attest to this, is just crazy in the year 2024.
Well, that's email CSS rules in general. You have to inline everything in the world. It's terrible.
Yeah, I think they are. Figma's starting to do some with like some limited languages. I don't know what they are because I know they're not the ones that we use, but they are. They dropped a whole bunch of stuff this year at Fig whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Config. I hate that name. I hate it. Everyone else loves it.
No, it's good. It's good.
Everyone else loves it, and I hate it. As a developer, config means something, and it's not sexy, and it's boring, and yeah, it's like that's a very, very unpopular opinion. I don't know. Maybe we should put a poll up with this.
You could also see how if your company's name's Figma and you're going to do a
Fig
conference, like you really have so many. Well, and they have a product named Fig Jam.
Jam.
So
Yeah.
I guess they could have named the conference that and named the other thing something.
I don't think it's as obvious or self-evident as you think it might be, Ramsey. Like, I think if I was in that boardroom when they were talking about it and someone's like, what about config? I would have been like, no, and here's why. And it would have been like, okay, let's go to the other.
You could have stopped this. Give this man a time machine.
Anyways, unpopular opinion. Lost my place.
I'm glad we covered that.
Yeah, very important. Put it in the show notes. So, okay, I just have a few questions that I like to write down ahead of these, just to keep the conversation going. So I saw a stat the other day. I believe I did not look into the veracity of the data science department at Dove, the shampoo company or the soap company, but I believe it was them that put out a stat that 2025, by the end of 2025, 90% of online content is going to be AI generated. And maybe they were referring to images or something like that, because like the whole point of their advertising campaign was like, we commit to putting out real images that don't show unrealistic standards of beauty and all that stuff. I think they've had a pretty successful marketing campaign over the Super Bowls, the last couple Super Bowls, of like, staying real or whatnot. But the point remains, like, it's pretty undeniable that the public internet space is going to be increasingly represented by AI generated content. Who knows kind of where that train starts or ends, or are we going to abandon the internet as we know it and throw it away and start over? But in the interim, as there is more and more AI generated content, how do you guys, what ideas have you had of approaching that in terms of, your product where you're selling insights on the internet as a larger body? How do you kind of like sort through?
Yeah. Our biggest risk is probably like hallucination or like straight up stock market manipulation by just dumping out content. Because if you write like a fake article and publish it in enough kind of reputable places, like you can get stuff picked up by Yahoo Finance. I don't know, what their editing kind of process looks like. So I think like what I'm trying to imagine is like, how do we have like a kind of, how do we make the knowledge tree or knowledge graph of like what's happening in the stock market that we'd be able to like protect ourselves or be robust against like market manipulation by people trying to flood some information out, through the kind of news sources. So that's kind of still an open question, and I'm sure anyone kind of dealing with the output of giant news sites and aggregators is wondering the same thing. But as far as like good information goes, for stuff that's real, it doesn't really matter how many times we see it repeated. Like, it'll just, make us have to spin up a few more like servers to run processing on stuff. But as far as like if 80% of the news is written by an AI, but it's true, that we're perfectly
Sure.
fine with that.
Right.
We're gonna have to work a little harder to find human sources to try to like build out some alpha. But as far as like, knowing what's going on in the market, we're we're content with true information, really, no matter where it comes from.
Sure.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'd be surprised right now if I'd be surprised right now if the majority of news publishers with respect to the stock market aren't using AI to some capacity when they're writing articles right now. Like you go to the average, stock market news publisher, CNBC, Market Watch, etc. Like a lot of them already have in their boilerplate articles like a disclaimer at the top or bottom that says like, hey, this is just like a restatement of some facts by AI. And like you can't blame them for doing that. I think there will always be a duality where, the facts, like Sam said, whether or not they're reported by a person or AI, as long as they're facts and they're truth, I'm pretty agnostic. But I think the more that things become AI, it's probably more of like a pendulum where the more novel and more interesting and more compelling that human opinions and intuition actually becomes. Like when you have a bunch of people just saying like the facts via AI, and then I think that presents an opportunity to come in and speculate and be interesting.
It's really boring to read AI written stuff all day.
It
Yeah,
is.
it just it makes more obvious. And I actually, well, it was Tanner's podcast. One of our sales and marketing director has another podcast called Decentralized Opportunity. Really good if you guys haven't had a chance to listen to it. I think Ramsey, did you go on there as well?
I thought that this was that.
No, this is the Dev Different podcast, bro.
I'm just kidding. No,
You haven't heard of us? We're streaking on the
I'm just giving you
up
crap.
and coming Nebraska-based podcasts in technology from a
You guys have a
semi-weekly.
stranglehold on the industry.
Yeah, yeah. But no, like I said on there, like we were talking with Tanner and Wyatt, like basically the more prevalent that AI becomes, the more important the ability to be creative is. Because the execution is going to become easier and easier and easier, whether that's building software or whether that's, implementing algorithms or writing papers or whatever it is, surveying. The execution is going to become easier and easier, but it's like those true original human thoughts that you can't, just prompt an LLM to have, that as AI becomes more prevalent, it paradoxically makes the human nature of creativity more valuable.
That's why I think we see return to blogging, honestly. Just because, like, even if you
Totally.
write the most insightful thing, but you put it in a place that's swarmed, it's not going to get picked up, even if it's the best article that platform has ever seen. So I think we're going to see kind of like a return to digital community off platform, like people having like websites. Hell, maybe we'll even get like keys back, where you can like have a key to verify that it's you in certain places. Who knows? But I think we'll see like digital community make a comeback. I think we should all start
And
personal blogs. This is my
I
like
think Sam should definitely start a personal
it's like
blog.
my off-grid homesteading, but for the internet.
I mean,
Internet homesteading. Yeah.
I think actually with AI, assuming that they can continue to do bot monitoring and like separate what is a bot versus what's a human on places like Twitter, I think that social media becomes more interesting over time. Like the more there is AI, there's two things that it can't replace. It's memes and hot takes, right? Like those will always, if you can do memes and hot takes, you'll always have a job in
Dude,
the
have you seen
world
the
of AI.
OnlyFans reply bots? They have hot takes like no other. They're in every
Yeah,
comment
but how
section
hot are
I've
the
ever
takes?
seen, and it seems to like the only reason that it's not a person is because they're in every reply to every viral tweet ever.
Are they
Yeah.
like funny though? Are they
Yes.
novel? Okay.
It's Twitter doesn't know how to
Yeah,
do
but
bot
I don't know. I
detection.
think
People can't do bot detection. Like
it was funny. I created a new Twitter account like 3 months ago, like right at the heart of when like all of the bot detection pressure was going on, and it literally and I'll have to see if I can find a video of this because I screen recorded it, but I had to do a 13-step CAPTCHA where you have to like do the different shapes and like type in different things to prove that I was not in fact a bot. And by the end of it, I was like, am I a bot or not? I couldn't even tell myself.
Yeah, it's gonna be wild, and I don't think anybody. I automatically, because there's a lot of tweets and stuff like that you see where people are like, "This is what the world will become in software," and it's like a very declarative, like 13-step. This is how it's gonna come out. And I'm like, well, do you really know though? Because like it's kind of like the stock market, right? Like if you actually knew, you wouldn't be telling people. You'd be trading it.
It's the LinkedInification of Twitter we're seeing before our very eyes.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, switching gears a little bit. One thing that I wanted to talk about. So this is the Dev Different podcast, Ramsey. Thank you very much for your information.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, and we are Code Buddies and largely a remote company. We don't have a physical office presence. I know that you guys do, but also spend some time working remotely. Sam, specifically, because I've found some like kind of interesting patterns in my daily development rhythm that maybe wouldn't be possible pre work from home. So how has being the CTO of a tech company remotely, which has its drawbacks, right?
Yeah.
Pronounced drawbacks in a lot of cases in terms of team unity and getting everybody on the same page. But what does kind of like your daily dev rhythm look like, or how are you going about building?
I think just off the bat, like on remote stuff, I think it only can work probably up to like a certain size of company. Because when you're 3 people, it's pretty easy to know, okay, this is what everybody's working on, and here's kind of like what we'd want to have done by, end of day, end of week, whatever. But like if I was running a team of devs, I mean, yeah, I'd want to be able to like walk over and ask what's going on. And, so I think at a certain time, growing pains will be able to be solved by that. But like my daily rhythm, since we are totally out of office right now, we got rid of our physical space. For me, it looks like my best days are days where I can wake up and not have to start doing stuff instantly. Like if I can go sit out in the sun and have like a coffee, like that's probably the biggest like indicator of how my morning's gonna go. And then most of it honestly comes into like, how do you bundle scheduling? Because if you split up a day into half-hour chunks of like meeting, no meeting, meeting, no meeting, yeah,
Checkerboard.
like if you're me, you're toast. Like it takes a decent amount of work to get back up to speed on like, okay, what problem even is this? Where does it come from? And once you're there, like usually fixing things is the easiest. It takes the least amount of time. But it's that Abe Lincoln. No, George Washington. If I was going to cut down a tree in 3 hours, I would spend the first 2.5, sharpening the axe or whatever. I think it was a shorter amount of time than 3 hours, but basically like all of the hard work comes before actually fixing stuff. So I try to do anything that requires a lot of thinking in the morning, and then afternoons are for easy stuff that I just don't want to do. Just pile all those together.
Yeah. And like schedule wise, like what's a day in terms of hours?
I'm kind of an on and off throughout, like 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. has kind of been ideal. And that's on the weekends, I'll keep it simple and I'll only do like 8 hours. But I usually get in trouble if I don't like vacuum. And so you gotta take the good with the bad. But
you should get a Roomba.
Dog would eat it. We tried.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Roomba, can you add some anti-dog AI, please?
Or like a hand so it can
just
pet
a
him,
barking
then
Roomba.
he'd be okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think the remote thing is definitely like where I personally work better. When I did cybersecurity, we got acquired by a company I didn't super love, and then I had to start going in 2 days a week. And the amount of like walk-ups that you get where people just cruise up and be like, I
Mm-hmm.
can't get on Facebook today. Like, can you
Mm-hmm.
fix this for me? And you look at their computer and it's like, how is this thing running at all? How did you get any of this garbage
Yeah.
installed? And you basically like have to spend a whole day figuring out, you know, why is this person even allowed to do any of this? Like, should they be fired?
Yeah.
Um, it's it makes for kind of a rough headspace where anyone can interact with you at any time, no matter what you're doing.
For sure. Yeah, I found like, because I agree, I work super well in a remote setting from like my deep development work perspective, with the caveat that like I don't have kids, right? Like my wife is away at med school most of the time, and like even when she's home, and she'll listen to this, so Anna, you know this. Like even when she's home, like it's different, right? To work in a building, like in a house where it's like I am the only individual here and like I can control any aspect of this whole environment. It's like
Yeah.
bliss, right? And then you get that chunk of meeting free time on your calendar and you're just like nobody talk to me and it's perfect. But yeah, I know like, you know, it's very different when you have other people around. But one thing that I've like really taken advantage of on the remote work stuff. I'm like a hobbyist woodworker, kind of 3D printing, you know, maker sort of guy, and I've got like a little amateur wood shop in my garage and things like that. And you know, I found like depending on what I'm working on, there's times when at least my brain like I'll get revved up on something and it's almost like there's too many ideas for like my own good, or I get stuck, you know, like those are the two kind of like stop conditions is like I have 9 million ideas that I need to do right now. It's like take a step back or like you get stuck. And like just the ability to like I'll just shut my computer off, like, you know, lock it whatever 11:15 in the morning, like I know I don't have any meetings. I'm working on some project in the wood shop, like throw an audio book in, spend 20 minutes like just doing something or even just like sweeping up and try to like completely forget about what it is that I'm working on or whatever ideas that I was having and then come back. And it's amazing how many times like just taking that clarity break, or you know, one of my previous companies we had a ping pong table and it was like really encouraged like anytime whatever go play some ping pong, and like just standing up like getting some physical sweat in, or you know whatever, not sweat but like,
Depends on the ping
you
pong.
know, you're moving, blood flowing. Yeah, it depends on the ping. We got pretty serious. But and then like the ability to like completely just because when you're playing ping pong, you can't think about anything other than the top spin you're about to hit,
Yep.
right? So that's been like one thing that I did not expect, and you didn't see in the BuzzFeed articles early in the pandemic about the pros and cons of working from
Yeah.
home. But like it's to the point where I'm like, well, if we ever, you know, if we ever blow up in an IPO or something like that, and have a good pile of money and we're building an office, I'm like, I might have to put a wood shop in next to my office because like this is too valuable of a thought
Yeah,
process.
something about getting like completely engrossed in something else. Like I recently picked up the saxophone, and I've
Mm-hmm.
never played like a woodwind. So there's definitely a lot of like when you need a break, you got to go do something where it demands kind of 100% like focus. Because at least at this point in my
Mm-hmm.
saxophone career, I can't get it to make a sound
Mm-hmm.
without about 100% focus. It's otherwise it gets a little squawky. But yeah, definitely like exact same thing. I actually do also do woodworking, which is funny. Um, and I miss my climbing gym, so maybe I should start that back up. But like yeah, those kinds of things where you go you go focus or you get hurt, so you better focus.
Mm-hmm.
Climbing
Yeah.
gym, woodworking, office space combination. There you go.
Well, and that's the thing too, right? Like yeah, okay, if we IPO for
And so,
$1 billion, like I might be able to be a rich asshole and say we're gonna build a wood shop next to my office, but like it's not feasible for everybody. So it's like it really is like kind of a true benefit of the work from home model is presumably everybody has different activities that are effective for their own, you know, their own interests at capturing 100% of their attention. And so it's like you probably have the stuff or the facilities or whatever it is to do that at your home. And so you can kind of like everybody can build their own ideal office all for the same purpose.
Like I could never play the saxophone in an office because it is so loud.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, but it would
be very distracting.
Other people would not love that.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite people is named Seth Peter. Sam and I worked out of his co-working space. He's a guy who started his own white hat, like ethical security hacking company way back when, sold it, and then bought a co-working space, turned half of it into a wood shop, and then spends most of his day working, and then at 5 p.m. goes and hangs out in the wood shop, makes some of the coolest furniture
he's the most talented
but he's living his life.
woodworker I've ever seen. He made a cow out of hexagons, and he won, I think, something at the state fair, like he won the blue ribbon in some category.
Yeah, he brought his cow to the state fair, won a ribbon the hardest way possible.
Like
synthetic cow blue ribbon, best this year.
Yeah, like but he won something in like the fine artwork woodworking category for his 3D nearly life-size cow. But
yeah, and there's something too, like, because I play piano as well. That's another like really good brain break. But there's something about like that physical actuation, like getting your body involved with doing something that's purely physical and not like, I don't want to say not intellectual, but like not overtly. Yeah. It's not, you're not on a computer, right? Like it might not be if your thing is like writing poetry or something like, or like long form prose, like it might not be the best thing to try to fit in as a brain break for 20 minutes for the same reason that you can't, do development on a 30-minute checkerboard, because it like takes some time to get in the flow and like figure out what you're doing. But, even like vacuuming or something like that, like it doesn't even have to be overtly fun to be like really useful in terms of just like palate cleanse. I come back, I also have a button on my Stream Deck that like the icon I have set up is it looks like somebody washing their hands, and it just closes every window on my machine. It's just like start over fresh. So like, go do some sanding or sweep up a pile of sawdust, get dirty, come back, palate cleanse. And it's like, it's incredible how often that's like you can go from, 180 degree turn in 30 minutes from like, I was convinced there wasn't a solution to this problem. And now it's like, duh, like I know what it is. So, well, awesome. I'm not sure how long we've been going, but it feels like around about the right amount of time. We'll have to have you guys on again though, because man, it's fun to cut it up with you guys again. It's been a while since we've had some extended time to chat. But yeah, thank you guys for coming on, and give a plug. What do you want people listening to the podcast, the dev differenters of the world? Where can they find you? What do you want to know? Go for it.
Yeah, I would say go to uptrends.ai, create an account, pro account, $50 a month, like relatively cheap compared to the other industry alternatives.
We should make a coupon code.
Sign up for an annual subscription. We could do, what should the coupon code be?
Well, it should probably be different is the code, and maybe half off for like 3 months.
Built different.
Probably just
all caps. I don't know if you guys do video with these, but put that on here, and you'll get 50% off 3 months Uptrends Premium.
Here, I don't know if we can actually do that, but
we're all pointing at Hunter.
Our editing guy, it's up here. Awesome. Well, hit up uptrends.ai. Where can they find you? You guys on LinkedIn?
Find me on Twitter. I'll put my @ also in the show notes, and then.
You can find me on Twitter at Sam Karf.
And then once I get my personal blog up and going, anybody who is with me in my homesteading movement can find my blog there.
Yeah, it's too bad. Somebody, after you mentioned that, somebody just bought samcartford.com.
I still own cartford.com. A subdomain it out for me and my brother.
There you go.
Sam also has a great email if you want to email him. I don't know if we should say it on the podcast.
They're going to flood my inbox.
You have the best email.
We'll put that in the notes too.
We'll talk about it offline. Yeah.
If you want it, you can have it. You just have to ask.
Yep.
Yeah, just send a DM to @SamCarf on Twitter if you want the super secret email.
Yeah, we're starting a club.
And he'll get you connected. Online digital community, if you will. Full circle.
There you go. Well, thanks for having us on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. And we'll catch you guys later. Thanks for sticking around to the end.
We made it.
Peace.